10:03 here on SENZ, and we're getting very close to Super Bowl, but we've got one very important round to sort out in NFL football, of course, and that is the AFC and NFC finals. They're on Monday morning New Zealand time, so Sunday in America, where we find MJ Hurley, who, of course, is the host of Third Down Thursday. It's a great Zoom show, and it really is worth following, particularly throughout the season proper, but really, MJ Hurley, good morning to you, New Zealand time. I've got to say, this is the time of the year where football fans get really excited, particularly if you're involved with the four teams that have still got a chance. And I mentioned, of course, the San Francisco 49ers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Good morning to you, our time, MJ. And how about these matches coming up?
Good morning, Ian. Thank you for having me back. It's going to be a very exciting weekend. Wildcard weekend was really fun. Divisional round disappointed a little bit, in my opinion, but you've got four really good football teams, and I'm really excited because any combination you can come up with for the Super Bowl out of these four teams, I think will be really exciting to watch.
Is it easy to come up with a Super Bowl? I look at the betting over here. The betting between the Chiefs and the Bengals is pretty much even. MJ, but they have got the Philadelphia Eagles slightly ahead in favoritism over the 49ers. That's the first game up. How do you view that one?
So really, Ian, the biggest reason that the Eagles are going to be favored, other than the fact that they were, sort of the consensus best team in football this year, the biggest reason is the quarterback position. So I'm sure you guys have heard about Brock Purdy, or as we like to call him, Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last pick taken in the NFL draft. Normally a person that rarely ever sees the football field. I mean, out of the last, I believe, 22 final picks of the NFL draft, Brock Purdy has already played more games in the NFL than almost all of them. So, when you look at that on paper, he should not be able to compare to Jalen Hurts, who is a top college prospect, played at Oklahoma, played at Alabama, two really high profile college football organizations, and then comes to the Eagles, has been incredible this NFL season, was an MVP contender. So on paper, Brock Purdy should not match up. But when you look at the numbers, he's fit into Kyle Shanahan's offense so well that it's incredibly seamless, going from Jimmy Garoppolo, who has led the 49ers to a Super Bowl, is an established veteran quarterback. There's no reason Brock Purdy should be able to do what he's doing, but I think that's a huge shout out to the 49ers and their coaching system, and also just the incredible talent they have. When it comes to, the rest of the team, both defenses are incredible. They both have some dynamic weapons. Honestly, I think that game should be as much of a toss-up as the Bengals-Chiefs game is, because both teams are just incredibly deep. And when you take out the fact that Brock Purdy was the last pick in the draft, if he was a first-round quarterback, this game would be dead even.
So we look at the targets for Brock Purdy. McCaffrey, unbelievable in the last outing. George Kittle, a little bit quieter, but they remain his best targets.
I think so. So George Kittle is a quarterback's dream, Ian, because he is the definition of a safety blanket. There was one particular pass in the 49ers last game against the Cowboys. Purdy was scrambling around a little bit. George Kittle was wide open on the far right side of the field. I mean, he's jumping up and down, waving his arms, screaming for his quarterback to throw him the football, but Purdy had scrambled off left and didn't see him. A few plays later on the same drive, George Kittle was doing a very similar thing down the middle of the field, found a little hole in the zone. This time Purdy found him, and he is just such a big target. He's incredibly athletic. He's just a massive man. And so it's really hard, because normally linebackers are covering George Kittle. It's really hard for a linebacker to keep up with him because of his size and his speed. So, I mean, even just taking away the rest of the guys, Christian McCaffrey is incredible. Deebo Samuel is one of the most unique targets in the NFL. But just the fact that a young quarterback who really is inexperienced like Brock Purdy, the fact that he has such an incredible safety blanket in George Kittle, I think that's been invaluable for him, because you can draw up as many incredible plays. You can scheme super well. You can have incredibly talented guys. but Brock Purdy still has to execute. And the fact that no matter what breaks down, he has George Kittle, who's not just incredible on the field, but in his demeanor. I mean, he's become really good friends with Brock Purdy. They did an interview together on Fox after the game on Sunday, and it's just amazing the friendship and the chemistry those two have been able to build in just 7 games. You don't see that very often in the NFL.
Jalen Hurts, tell us about his offensive line.
His offensive line, not only are they the best offensive line in football, one of the best offensive lines I've seen in a long time. I don't know if you know this, Ian, but they can actually sing. They recorded, I don't know if they sing. I don't know if they sing well. That'll be up to the ears of the beholder. But his offensive line, they're so close, Ian, that they recorded a Christmas album together that they actually posted. I believe it's on Spotify if you want to go look it up. And that O-line led by Jason Kelce, who does a really cool podcast. I'll give him a shout out with his brother, Travis Kelce, who's on the Chiefs. They host a podcast together, and they just give like some cool insights into the things in the NFL that you might not know about if you don't talk to players. But they're such a close-knit group. They're so good. They have their now famous quarterback sneak that they run, which I believe has only been unsuccessful 2 times this season. That's how good it is. So if they get 1 yard to go, everyone knows they're going to run a quarterback sneak and nobody can stop it. So it's just, again, the same way that George Kittle is invaluable for a young quarterback. Having such a good offensive line has really improved Jalen Hurts' game because he knows that he has the protection necessary to execute his game plan. If he wants to run, he can run. But it's a lot different than, say, Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson, who sometimes are running for their life because their offensive line is breaking down. When Jalen Hurts has the opportunity to run, it's because he wants to or because it was planned. So that offensive line, man, has been just fantastic.
Looking at a capacity crowd size of around about 70,000 people at Lincoln Financial Field. How much of an advantage is that, or do players in the NFL not regard that as too much of an issue?
Oh, it is. It's an issue, Ian. The Eagles, I've been able to watch a couple Packers games because, that's my fan affection. I've seen a couple Packers games, a couple Packers playoff games in Philadelphia in my lifetime, and they are rowdy. It's affectionately called the city of brotherly love, which is very ironic because there's not much love that comes from those fans. I mean, a couple years ago when the Eagles were really bad before Carson Wentz left, they would just shamelessly boo their own team. They do not care. So they are ruthless for the opposing team. They're ruthless against their own team. But you're right, with 70,000 at Lincoln Financial, it is going to be a very hostile environment for San Francisco. And San Francisco fans do not travel very well, particularly from West Coast to East Coast here in the U.S. That's a really long trip for 49ers fans, and Philly fans are going to pack that house, and they are going to be loud.
Right, okay, let's go to the second game, the later game. That is the Chiefs and the Bengals, very, very close together. Point one, Mahomes fully fit, you think?
So there's a video, I want to say it was Tuesday, of Patrick Mahomes running around at practice, and he looked really good. And I don't know if the report about his diagnosis, because they initially said that it was a high ankle sprain, which is normally for an NFL or an NBA, like a high profile athlete. Even then, for such a good athlete, it's usually at least 2 weeks before they're running around normally. And seemingly a couple days later, Patrick Mahomes is running around, at least in some of the videos we've seen. He is running around looking like he's all good. And for somebody who's getting paid $500 million, I am very confident in saying that he would not be out practicing this week if the Chiefs had any concern about his ankle. And for the most part, he's been a full participant in practice. He's been doing everything he needs to do. And when it comes down to it, it's the AFC Championship game with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. I mean, unless he was risking his own safety and like his future well-being, Patrick Mahomes is going to be on that field. And as you saw last week in the divisional round, even when Patrick Mahomes is not at his best, he didn't play for the whole second quarter, and he was hobbling around in the second half. he still handled the Jaguars with no problem. So I'm not saying the Bengals will be handled with no problem, but Patrick Mahomes will be as close to his best as he can be. And even 70% of Patrick Mahomes is terrifying.
So from the Bengals' point of view, how do they shut down that combo, Mahomes and the aforementioned Travis Kelce?
It is almost impossible to shut them down because, and it's really unfortunate because you can game plan as much as you want. There's a pretty famous clip of Kelce in the Super Bowl against the 49ers a few years ago. And he just went up to Mahomes as he was leaving the huddle. And he said, "Hey, I'm actually going to run this route." Completely off script, completely away from the play they had called. He just noticed based off of the personnel the 49ers had out there, "Hey, I think I'm going to run this route." And that was one of the plays that got them in winning position in that game. He did the same thing in that really high scoring game. I believe that was 2 years ago against the Bills. I mean, Travis Kelce is just an incredible tight end. And then you have an equally incredible talent at quarterback. That's really hard to stop. Now, it's a little easier than in past years because the Chiefs have, on paper, fewer weapons. Tyreek Hill is in Miami now. They just don't have the firepower that people perceived they had in the past. But here's the thing. Andy Reid is one of the best offensive minds the NFL has seen in 30 years. I mean, he has revolutionized the way that the game is played. And so even you've got rookies like Sky Moore on the Chiefs, who in any other offense would probably be getting almost no running time. He'd be getting very few snaps. And just once or twice a game, Mahomes finds Sky Moore on a nice little 20-yard crosser. I mean, the way that the Chiefs have built their offense, and then don't knock McCole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, they've got some good veterans. They may not be as flashy as Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill, but the unit that they have on offense is just so cohesive. And the same way I talked about the Eagles' offensive line, they just work really well together, the Chiefs' offense, and they have such incredible chemistry that you can game plan really well. You can execute really well, and they just still find a way to pick you apart. And it's really just a slow and painful death sometimes for these defenses because they feel like they're doing such a good job. And then Kelce breaks one for 25. They get a nice little run for 10, and they will dink and dime you to death, Ian.
So this will be at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. There'll be a touch under 73,000 people there. And that's where the Cincinnati Bengals have to make their entrance, I believe, with one of the form quarterbacks of this NFL season in Joe Burrow. Yes. For Zach Taylor. I think Joe Burrow's been quite outstanding.
Joe Burrow has been, Ian, he's been so good that out of nowhere, a lot of people, including myself, are thinking, do we have to start considering him as one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the NFL? Now, again, I will say with my eyes, Patrick Mahomes is one of the two best human beings to ever throw a football that I've ever seen in my life. So I'm not saying on a raw talent base that Joe Burrow is better than Patrick Mahomes. I don't think anybody's going to say that. But he's got some incredible game presence. He is cocky, and that man backs it up, which is really hard to do in the NFL. And he's been so good that Bengals fans are calling it, instead of Arrowhead, they've been calling it Burrowhead, because he was able to go in this year and beat Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, which folks rarely do. And so, he has been producing at a very high level. He has his best friend, Jamar Chase, who's been with him since their days at LSU. And they're just a force on offense. No matter what's going on, Burrow is calm. He's cool. He's collected. And he's not going to shy down from one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL at Arrowhead. So 73,000 fans or not, it's not going to faze Burrow. It really just comes down to which offense can execute better. In my mind, I think that's why it's such a close spread, because on offense, they're so evenly matched. The Chiefs defense has a little bit of that the edge over the Bengals, I think. But, maybe some of that is taken off by Mahomes' ankle. Either way, this is the game to watch, I think, because the Bills played fantastic this year. Josh Allen is really good. But I do think at this point in time, Mahomes and Burrow are the class of the AFC. And we might be seeing, Ian, a level of AFC quarterback play matching up year after year that might end up comparing to Manning versus Brady back in the early 2000s.
Wow, now that is interesting because we've talked about the quarterbacks because they're so key. So we've talked about Purdy and Hurts and Burrow. Of the four that are on show this weekend, I think it's fair to say that Patrick Mahomes is the most accomplished, the best achiever so far, which brings me to the two old guys. And every time we talk to you, we talk about this, and we talk about Rodgers, we talk about Brady. They're not involved in this part of the season from here on in. Will they be involved again, and where? And I saw a program on ESPN the other day. They're talking about Rodgers may be going somewhere. They're still trying to find a home for Brady, even though he got the Buccaneers through to a decent position in the competition. Where will they be, these guys?
Tom Brady is the one that I won't speculate about, not because of my disdain for him, which you know all too well, but I really don't think that anybody knows where Tom Brady is going or what he's going to do. He might retire. I mean, his last press conference in Tampa this year sounded kind of like he was going to retire. But so I'm not going to speculate that much on him. I think if he were to leave Tampa, top two destinations, would probably be Vegas or Miami. I don't think Miami would move on from Tua because Mike McDaniel really seems to like him. But, if you get the chance to get Tom Brady, most of the time you do that. But then for Aaron Rodgers, it is driving me crazy. And this is the fan in me talking for once. It's driving me crazy that we have to talk about this man the same way for the third offseason in a row. Where's he going to go? What's he going to do? All of this. I don't know if you saw today, the Jets hired as their offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, who coached this season as the head coach in Denver, but he was the Packers offensive coordinator in 2020 and 2021 when Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs. So it really appears that the Jets are making a run to try and convince Aaron Rodgers that, hey, if you do want to leave Green Bay, this might be a place where you could feel at home. It's a big market. You can still get all the attention that you love. And hey, by the way, we've got some good young weapons. We've got a nice young offensive line. And we brought in your old buddy that you were so successful with in Nathaniel Hackett. So, I mean, if you want to line up the best storybook place for Aaron Rodgers to go, because remember, Brett Favre in 2008, when he retired and unretired again in Green Bay, he was traded to the New York Jets. So if you want the weirdest parallel I've seen in the NFL in a long time, Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets could be really interesting. And, everybody in Green Bay is keeping things pretty quiet. Aaron Rodgers is keeping things pretty quiet. As far as I know, he's not made a decision on his end if he wants to continue playing, if he wants to stay in Green Bay, because at this point, I think it's the least likely option that Aaron Rodgers plays next season in Green Bay, because both sides have to agree that he wants to keep playing and he wants to keep playing there, and then the same for Green Bay. It's just he's owed $60 million again, and that's a lot of money for Green Bay. You get a more desperate team like the Jets who really feel they're a quarterback away. That's one thing. But for Green Bay, $60 million for the type of performance Rodgers had this last season, not saying that he can't turn it back around and win an MVP next year, but at some point you have to try out your young first-round quarterback in Jordan Love, who's been there for 3 years and hasn't been had the chance to be the guy yet. So if I had to put my money on it, Aaron Rodgers won't be a Packer next year.
Okay, he won't be a Green Bay Packer, right. That's interesting news for you in particular, MJ Hurley. Always great to catch up with you. Host, of course, of the Third Down Thursday, that incredibly successful Zoom. So, hey mate, wonderful. Enjoy the football on Monday. Or it's Monday our time, Sunday afternoon, and Sunday your time. So we look forward to it with relish. It's a great body of NFL support in New Zealand, and I particularly have a vested interest in the San Francisco 49ers. So there you go.
Okay. All right. Sounds good, Ian. Thank you, sir, and best of luck to your 49ers.